What's up, shifters and diet busters? How are we? We are on day 3 of the challenge. We are back in our house. We are not. Jen is going to join us virtually. So virtually, she's going to be on the other side of the camera with you guys. So when you jump on, give us a hello, give us a hi, let us know how your Thursday is treating you. We're in Colorado and we got a lot of snow, but now we have beautiful sun, beautiful sun. So it's super bright today. But how you doing today, babe?
Doing good. It's Thursday. Feel a little, at least I know it's Thursday. Yesterday you thought we were on a whole different day. So at least I know it's Thursday today. So.
I literally texted one of my clients. I was like, "We good for 5?" And she's like, "No." And I was like, "Isn't it Tuesday?" And Brandon and Jen were like, "No, it's not." Hi, Callie. How are you?
How you doing? How's school? How's college life?
Loving college life. All right, guys. So we're going to jump in. We had a couple questions that carried over from yesterday. So we're going to chat about that. We're going to chat about what to do after this workshop ends and what kind of your next steps can be inside of this group and moving forward. And we're just going to have a lot of fun. So if you have questions, feel free still to drop them in here. We're happy to answer them. Tell us where you're watching from. Say hi. Hi, Kat. Current shifters, if you guys want to drop any knowledge bombs here, that's awesome too. Oh, Jen's coming. All right, guys, we're going to see if this is going to work. Oh, bro.
Is that an invite? Did you already send the invite?
I did. All right, I think Jen's coming. Hi, Valerie. Joining. It says Jen is coming. Adding. Whoa.
She on?
Yo!
Look at that.
Well, we can't hear you though.
Here.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
Sweet.
Awesome. Hi,
Look
Michael.
what technology brings in.
Michael's in North Dakota, so we might have to lean in. We got to snuggle. Good thing we're married.
I don't know if well, that might just be on Jen and ours.
Yeah. All right, guys. If you're watching on
Yeah.
camera the regular direction, are we top and bottom?
Or am I cut off?
We're
I don't know if this would be a.
This might have been a plan.
Yeah, this might be a plan. It's all a ploy.
Oh no, now you're sideways, Jen. Stay like that.
Okay.
Oh goodness, this is funny. Hi, Katie. All right, guys.
Okay.
We're gonna jump in. If you can't see the person talking, just tell us and we'll lean in. We'll lean either way. So
We're gonna lean into these things.
we're gonna lean into it. All right, man. What questions do we
So
have?
I think the first one came, I think, from Patricia yesterday. She was asking a little bit about BMR, essential basal metabolic rate calculations. And she said she had gone to the.
Kat says you're cut off, so lean in.
Cut off.
Lean in.
Okay. So we're gonna swap it
We're
out.
gonna stagger ourselves.
So essentially is what is that first and foremost? Okay. So first, your basal metabolic rate is essentially. So before I dive into that, one thing I want to make sure is understand, because the questions we get all the time from people is like, why is this basal metabolic rate different than the one that I calculated on this site versus the one that my doctor's using? Why this? So just to clarify, you guys, no matter what resource you're using, I mean, there have been ones that have been shown to be kind of the gold standard and all those kind of things. But at the end of the day, yet again, we talked about this on day 1 via calories, is those are equations that come from essentially a laboratory, and they're just estimations, right? And so kind of going back to day 1 is your own metabolic rate is going to be independent to you via your microbiome, via your muscle mass, via your body fat percentage, via literally what type of fat that you carry, via your muscle type, your muscle fibers, the type of training you're doing, your amount of stress. All these things are going to literally sway that equation all over the place. All right. So when we're looking at that and you get those numbers, take it kind of like with, I don't want to say a grain of salt, but take it as information, as kind of like data to utilize to see how that fits into your life and where that is currently at. Okay. So when it comes to basal metabolic rate, think of that, you guys, is basically if I was going to sit in this chair all day long, breathe, sit, not do anything, and just basically function, just to keep myself thinking, breathing, and functioning, think of that as basically your basal metabolic rate, kind of the bare minimum of what you need in order to quote unquote survive and function on a day-to-day basis. Okay. Now, when it comes into equating calorie estimations, right, like essentially your total daily expenditure or allowance, depending on what terminology you want to use, is there's other factors that get factored into that, right? So first off, it's the thermic effect of food. We use that one in the equation that we're using. So essentially, there's another tidbit as to why just counting calories is inaccurate, because literally when you chew and digest your food, it requires energy to digest that food. And so if I'm sheerly just going off of calorie counting or even my macro count, I could be missing pieces of the puzzle based off of what I'm eating, the process in which it is required to digest and distribute that. Those things are going to factor into the equation. And then on top of that is essentially your non-activity energy expenditure throughout the day. So essentially, what type, are you working in a job that's construction? Are you on your feet all day long? Are you highly active? Are you somebody who sits in a desk all day long that very minimally, if at all, gets up and moves around, right? Like what are you doing that is non-extracurricular activity in addition to what you're doing, all right? And then on top of that, we factor in essentially your extracurricular activity via your exercise. If you're going to Orange Theory, or you're doing some other training program, or you're a Zumba person or a yoga or whatever that may be. I don't want to say person, right? Like whatever activity you're doing is going to attribute to that that calculation as well. So when it comes to looking at essentially your BMR, won't go into all the little tidbits of acronyms on there, but it's really, you guys, what we try to really help everyone that goes through the shift program, because we utilize macros, we utilize the hand method, we utilize all different kind of things. What feels right for the person is we get the questions like, well, how come this number's different over here? How come this number's different over here? Well, yet again, equations are going to fluctuate depending on the source that goes into it. But also, I know for a lot of you guys that have entered the door of, I came here to want to promote some weight loss, to do those kind of things. But when I put my my essential biomarkers into this equation, the number comes out to like 1,800 to like 2,400 calories is what the suggested number is. Now, even the gold standard has been shown to be, if you carry a higher percentage of body fat via like upwards of like 28 to 30 and plus % body fat, the gold standard is estimated to be literally about 60% accurate. Okay. And that's the gold standard, let alone like the other equations that get thrown around out there. And so it's when we get into essentially a high percentage of body fat, like your fat is still an organ. And still, based off of these equations, it's going to factor in like you are a bigger human being, which is going to require a higher sense of metabolic function for you to continue living and breathing and functioning. But in order so we can use that data, right? Like it's not as hard set thing. We can use that data to essentially fluctuate and use, what you're doing on a day-to-day process to use that. So yeah, there is a piece of attributing to caloric value that comes into the equation to manipulate what we want to get as far as the promotion, what we're trying to get. But at the same time frame of that is if I'm essentially upwards of 30, 35, 40% body fat, I'm going to get a high reading that actually might not be the appropriate estimation for my body, for my lean body mass. And so that's where that's where the coaching element of what we tend to do tends to be able to bring these things to a different level to kind of see what's appropriate for you, what's sustainable, because that's the other thing is depending on what you get your estimation from, and then the recommendation is usually coming from a dietary recommendation that is trying to usually slash your calorie count by like absurd amounts that, yes, you might lose some weight for about a month, but is not going to be sustainable because yet again, you're undernourishing yourself, and that's where it comes in. So just to hopefully clarify, you guys, is all these calculations, no matter where you get them, is based off an estimation that has a lot of different variables into the equation. So allow yourself, if you are going through that, if you want help, if you want those things, feel free, reach out, ask questions, but know that if you are getting this information, take it as data. You can utilize it for a given amount of time. What we always try to help our people understand is it's data. Do it for a while, but do it consistently. How do you feel? How is your mood? How are you responding? How's your performance? How is your intake? How is your sleep? I can go on and on and on all about the things that we try to open up different avenues of gauging success on. But ultimately, you guys, it's an equation.
I'm gonna make a clip of Brandon saying I can go on and on and on, and we're gonna make a meme out of that. If you guys haven't been around, we love Brandon. He's not a short-winded person.
This is my wife.
And I am married to her. Yes, I chose this decision. So the other thing I want to say, you guys, is that like you get to use yourself as a science experiment, right? Like one of the biggest things we teach is awareness, right? So it's always awareness. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? What are you doing? What are you eating? How are you feeling? All of that. Like you have to have awareness first. And so many of us want to just be like, give me the magic pill, give me the magic equation, give me the magic. Like, okay, we are magic, but like you got to do some of it too.
Voila.
So voila, you're magic. So just think about that as like it's a process, right? And it gets to be a process and it gets to be a journey, right? Like we're all about life is about the journey and not the destination. So if you can have that in your mind and change the way, like get out of sort of the challenge mentality of like I'm gonna do this thing for this amount of time and go into an understanding and a discovery. We're talking this week in our current shifters group about curiosity. Like you can get in a place of curiosity and compounding effect. That's when you're really going to see the difference. And then you start to worry less about those numbers because you're like, okay, I do about this every day and this is how I feel and I'm getting the outcome I desire. Okay.
Jen, you got any thoughts?
And hello, everyone who's just joined.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Very faint.
Oh, sweet. I
You're
wasn't
quiet,
quite sure if I was mute over here or not.
You're really, really quiet though. Can you turn your volume up?
It is up all the way.
Oh, well, we can hear you, but we'll
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, don't worry. Just keep going. But yeah, I completely agree with the thoughts of just using yourself like an experiment, right? So some things are going to work for some things are not going to work for others, right? But at the end of the day, if we start off with that angle of curiosity, we can achieve the results we want. So thank y'all. I can hear you. I feel better.
Awesome.
This is so cool.
So,
Technology's
cool. It's kind of
I'm
weird
looking
and
at
cool.
my computer, you guys. So if you wonder why I'm like not off in La La Land, but Kat says, I think I wasn't having enough fat in my diet. I added bacon. I added bacon to my breakfast. It does this sound right? Or just in my head? Kat, if you can eat bacon for breakfast, I'm all for it, right? I love bacon. So if you feel better, Kat, you're very connected and you've done this for a while. So if you feel better and you're feeling good with that, go for it. And again, like for you guys, the other part, and I don't know if we talked about this yesterday, we just talked about talking about it, but you know, as you gain muscle and as you continue to be consistent and as your body, like your metabolism turns back on and you start gaining muscle, like you're gonna need more food. And that's a beautiful thing, right? And so that's the downside of like when we get into diet culture is that you start losing your muscle, right? And so Kat, like we know, Kat comes to our gym. So like we know how much you're working out and how much muscle you're gaining. So if you feel like you need more food, definitely add it, see how your body responds, and then continue, you know, because again, the goal is to eat as much as you can and still maintain the results that you desire.
I think that follows into, I think it was Leanne's question. So
a question.
A question regarding essentially adjusting your macros as you start to essentially change your body starts to change. And I think this is good because it's coming from one of our shifters. Her body's starting to change, so she's trying to figure out how to adjust that. And so sorry. And so essentially on this, you guys, is kind of what Courtney was just talking about. As you start to experience change and you start to develop, especially if you are going through exercise regimen and you are potentially adding more muscle mass. And I always say this because, you know, I know the platform on here is predominantly women. And every time I say muscle mass is we think that we're going to turn into bodybuilders. I can't say this enough is no matter what you guys do, and all of a sudden, if you stop running and just went over to straight weight training, you're not going to look like a bodybuilder. All right. Like I think
takes a lot of work.
Yes, remove that sense from you. I think if there's one thing that we really try to help all of our clients understand, especially when it comes to women, is for all of you guys that yet again are trying to essentially lose weight and lose body fat. the biggest bang and metabolic thing that you're going to get benefit from is increasing your strength and increasing your muscle mass. Like that is the biggest bang for your buck. It's not how many more calories can I burn, how many more things can I do throughout the day. Is if you want the magic pill, increase your muscle mass, you'll burn more calories throughout the day. Like it's a metabolic machine.
And I want to say on an aesthetic side of things, like when you get more muscle is actually smaller in size. So like your size will decrease and the shape of your body will change, right? And I think that's the coolest part is like your body shape will actually change. So you're not just a like deflated. That's a new word I just created. Deflated version of yourself, right? And so that's the cool thing about muscle is it actually changes what your body looks like. And it is physically smaller, so you will look smaller even if your weight doesn't change. So that's a really, really good thing to understand.
And a pound is a pound. Like, just to clarify, I know we should have talked about this on day one of the myth portion. I think we did it the first time through, but a pound is a pound. Like, you hear that all the time. Is well, I haven't changed. My weight hasn't changed, but my body fat has dropped. Yet again, if there's another suggestion I can give for y'all out there, if you know your body fat, use that as another indicator. Like use the data. I'll use all the data points, right? If you can transition and allow yourself to shift in the sense of where you look at things, of not just what the scale is saying, but also what is your body fat indicating? Because I've seen it a million times over is usually if you can decrease your body fat and essentially if your body weight even stays the same and you decrease your body fat, usually that means your metabolic functions, your insulin levels go down, your triglyceride level usually goes down. All your other biomarkers typically move in a better health and wellness regimen when your body fat decreases. Yes, we can still use the scale as an indication there, but if you still are carrying a high propensity of body fat, your risk factors for diabetes, heart disease, all those things increase exponentially. So yet again, if you're using data, it's not just the scale. You know, I always say, ideally, if we can get your body fat to adjust, that also means you're going to be closer to doing a pull-up, potentially more push-ups. You're going to get faster. You're going to be able to see what your body is capable of doing, not just what it looks like.
Let me just post in our group too, and this is where we try to like, oh, it's cardio, it's this, it's that. And one of the gals that's in the current shift program said, I can tell my strength is improving because my row got faster. Oh, go figure. So it's not like this or that, right? If your row gets faster, your legs get stronger, or like if you get stronger, your row's going to get faster, your running's going to get easier. It all goes together, right? If you listen to us at all, everything goes together, and that's a beautiful part of it. So I do want to say, Jory said she can hear Jen, so I bet our volume is just turned down. So I'll try to turn it up and not be obnoxious, but
essentially with that, you guys, is if you are following a macro regimen on there, is yet again, it's coming from a place of curiosity, right? Like, what have I been doing? Because I think that's the other thing we typically see is when we work with clients for a duration, and I think Ferdy's on here, and I know he's gone through his own experience of weight loss and everything else, and we get really, really attached to what we're doing in the process of this has worked, right? Like that's the other thing we see, whether it's transitioning from a keto diet, a ketogenic diet, from a Mediterranean diet, or whatever we were doing to elicit the response of what we were doing. But we may be getting some restriction a little bit of feeling like that might be not sustainable in the things that we want to experience now. And we get really uncertain of like, but that's the thing that has worked so long for me.
Fear starts to come in. If I stop doing that thing, then what do I do now?
Yes. And so it's being able to, okay, what is our story first and foremost, right? Like what's going on? Why are we doing this? What's the outcome that now we're desiring? What path do we want to go on? Like all the steps is the same as if you were restarting. But at the same time from there is like we make small incremental adjustments to that. Right. Like, I mean, what I would say is, if you're using a calculator, put your statistics back in on those and see what comes out, and then see what you're doing right now.
Well, and what we do with a lot of our clients too is like if you have been in a deficit and you've been in sort of a cut phase, you can what's called reverse dieting, right? So you don't just like go right back to what you were doing, but there's actually a process to like get your body to continue to function the way that it is and reverse your diet back up in calories, right? There's an actual process to go through that we've walked a lot of people through, which works really, really well because you start to increase your metabolism again, increase your food without putting, weight back on or fat back on if you've been in kind of a cut phase. So that's something else we can do as well.
Because that's the same for somebody like Kat. I think she's experienced like kind of that massive metabolic function where she's really, really hungry now and is adding bacon and stuff to breakfast. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm pretty sure Kat's not throwing in like a slab of bacon in there. I'm sure it's just a little bit, but in the same time frame of that is I've also seen where we're used to, say, for example, say my estimation was 1,800 calories and I've been eating 1,500 calories to elicit some fat loss. Well, if all of a sudden I start increasing my muscle mass and my activity level and everything else, where now my real number is more like 2,200, but I'm still functioning at like 1,500, that's when I start to become potentially catabolic. And that's when I start to lose my muscle mass, which in turn is my biggest metabolic contributor. And that's why for so many of you guys that go on so many of the atypical diets where I saw such progress, but then when I checked my body scan, I actually lost weight and I lost muscle. Well, that also means your metabolism also slowed down. So that means that number you were going off of might actually be less and might not be responding as well because your new metabolism and your new metabolic function is actually lower. And that's when we run into the dreaded plateau that is inevitable. I will say that like your body wants to make sure that it's not in a place of famine. So it does halt the brakes naturally. But if I'm functioning unknowingly and going by what most diets do by slashing calories, is I'm usually losing my muscle, which in turn is going to slow my metabolism. So once I eventually go back to giving myself the foods that I may be feeling restricted from, that's when I go back up past my normal body weight, if not even higher. And that's when we end up on the repetitive cycle over and over and over. All right. So there's a lot that goes into this, but it's really being aware.
We can barely hear you, Jen.
Okay. I was going to say, there was a question from Julie about composition.
Competition?
Right? Composition.
Or composition.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure we tied these topics.
Yep. Okay.
So I wanted to make sure we tied these topics.
Yep.
Do you understand?
Tight.
What's the question though from Julie?
So the question was regarding body fat and body composition and, helping with the body composition part. So one of the things we talk a lot about is muscle, metabolic rate, etc. So I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but kind of wanted to see if you want to touch on that for a second.
So what I'm assuming is, especially what we tend to see from women, is usually it's the hips, the thighs, that type of area.
Right.
Even though I'm putting on all this muscle, this area isn't decreasing. Would that be right?
I think so.
Okay.
But yeah, let's go on that for a little bit.
Okay.
Right?
So yeah, usually what we tend to say, well, this is the area that I want to lose, right? Like my mom, love my mom, but usually it's like, it's just this. It's this thing right here. If I could just get rid of that. And so what I try to help people understand is if you're losing body fat, you're not just losing it from like your shoulders and your neck, right? But those are usually the places we see it. And the reason why is because those have a different type of fat, right? Like surrounding your spine, around your collarbone, around your neck is it's a higher propensity of brown fat. And so brown fat is actually a fat that burns fat, right? Like we all think that all fat is created equal and it's this bad thing. Well, fat is, first off, it's an organ and it's meant to, first off, an element of survival for you. So we all need fat, but there's different types of fat. And so usually what we see, especially when it comes to women, is we see it a lot around the collarbones. We see our shoulders, we see our neck, we see more definition up here. But when it comes to like our waist, our thighs, our hips, it's not moving as fast as what we want. But if you're losing it in one place, you're losing it overall. But I know, especially for guys, we tend to, we're the apples, women are the pears, is kind of what they always compare, like body types of like those type of things. And so guys, we always see it in our gut. We don't lose it in our gut very well. Well, the other reason for this is, and this is also when it comes to like, if we do the same diet, and usually what we get from a lot of couples is My husband does this at like 1/10 of the percent I do, and he loses weight like it's going out of style, but I'm doing this to a T, and I'm getting like 1/4 of the results.
Yeah, this is where you see the memes about, you know, the guy who's not drinking Diet Coke or Coke anymore, and all of a sudden he loses 40 pounds.
Yes.
And here we are, Courtney and I,
Yeah,
just,
it's true.
you know,
it's
working
real.
our butt off.
And
But,
so it usually gets attributed is first off, muscle mass, yet again, does play a factor into this. But it was also, and I didn't understand this for a long time, is also women, there's different types of, there's different types of fat, and there's different types of receptiveness to different types of training. And so like women in around the hips and the thighs, that's usually more of like an owl. I think it's, don't quote me on this, but it's either alpha or beta, and essentially the receptiveness of the type of like muscle fibers and stuff that get actually promoted during training. So like doing a high amount of aerobic activity, women are usually more aerobic type of muscle fibers. So they don't have a lot of like the explosive elements. Like if you look at a sprinter, like a 100-meter sprinter, usually they carry a lot more muscle mass because they're more explosive. Well, they also usually tend to have a higher metabolic function because of that type of muscle fiber. Like there's different types of muscle that create different things, right? Like that's why like a marathon runner and a sprinter don't typically look the same, and because it's different type of muscle fiber types. Well, dietary function is also going to dictate that as well. And so same thing comes when it comes to men and women. Like for men, when it comes around like the gut area and those, it's I'm pretty sure it's beta. Well, that type of fat is way more responsive to certain types of exercise. And so when it comes to females around the hips, the thighs, it's not necessarily as responsive. So it takes more time. And that's why usually more aerobic activity isn't necessarily the most beneficial factor for that. It's usually doing more of a resistance training, especially in those areas, to promote more muscle tissue to secrete and burn that area a little bit more efficient.
Well,
did I explain it all right?
You did, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I think, you know, for a lot of us, part of the Orange Theory community, very used to cardio.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of cardio involved, right? And you know, maybe a fraction of the time is spent on the weight room floor. And sometimes we run through that or we breeze through that. So yeah, that focus on muscle. And, you know, like when I heard about muscle and eating more, I was like, I'm sold. Whatever it is, I'm sold. So I'm just going to lift heavier. But I think as you were talking, Brandon, we kind of blew some minds. Kat's minds, Ferdinand's mind that got completely blown here. And then I know Erica and Tiffany have both been carrying those heavier weights, which has been epic. And it gets about the balance, right? But one of the things I often say about weights is take that 5-pound weight more, as long as it's good form.
Yeah.
You know, what's the worst thing that's going to happen at the end of the day? You do 2 reps instead of 10. Well, put it down and pick up the other, right? But that constant stretch on building, you know, muscle mass and weight is something that takes a little bit getting outside the comfort zone, but it's so important.
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you guys, like when I started, I mean, I was a triathlete, I was a soccer player, I did strength training what I thought was heavy. And then we started doing CrossFit, and it was a whole different ballgame. Like when we started CrossFit, I could deadlift, I think 95 pounds was my max, and now my max is 260 pounds, and I weigh like $110. So like, I think Tiffany just said that, like you have no idea how strong you are until you start doing it. And P.S., when you start doing it, you get stronger, right? And to me too, there's an empowerment that comes to being strong that has nothing to do with like what your body looks like or your metabolism, but like, when you feel strong, you carry yourself different, your confidence is different, all those things happen. And like, there's that idea too of like, well, if I can do that in the gym, like bring all the problems to me. I got this, right? And like, it changes your energy. So I think that's a really big thing. What I was going to say though, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe that men like genetically are like 55% muscle and women are like 45%, right? And so that's part of it when you start shifting your diet is that like they genetically have more muscle as men, right? Testosterone, all of those things. But then men tend to be like, if you were going to be stereotypical, women are like, I'm going for a run, and guys they're like, I'm going to lift, right? And so there's that too. But it like your body will respond if you challenge it so that it actually needs to change, and then you feed it. Like I promise you, I've done those things, and my body shifted a whole bunch. So,
well I think with that is, comparison-wise, men and women secrete similar elements of testosterone. But when you look at body size, right, like if you even, I'm not the biggest human being in the world, but like compared to Courtney and I, right? Like me losing X amount of weight, like if I lost 10 pounds versus like of 10% of my body weight of my body size, it'd probably be much more noticeable versus like her because of just sheer frame size. So I think sometimes we get kind of lost of like, yet again, in the numerical nuances of what the scale says, as opposed to like, well, given your height and your stature, you might lose like a significant amount of what your body is, but we get lost of what's happening on a scale, right? So I think sometimes attributing those things.
Okay, so a couple questions. Lenore says progressive overload men for muscle gain.
Yeah, so I mean there's a million different ways in where you can do these things. Like you can progressive overload, there's the conjugate system, there's 5-1, there's max rep, there's the repetitive method, there's a million different ways when it comes to strength training. My big sense is kind of going along with Jen is, first off, is we want to make sure, from my viewpoint, is what I've said is we want to make sure that everyone has fundamental movement patterns first. We want to make sure that you can squat, you can stand, you can pick things up, you can lunge, you can bend, you can do things that are going to naturally equate to what you do in life. And then we're talking about progressive overload. And so what we're looking at is essentially you can do that with loading, you can do it with repetitions, we can do it with time under tension, you can do it with all kinds of different ways of doing that. But essentially it's, week 1, I do, 10 reps at X amount of weight. Week 2, I do 8 reps, but then I increase the weight from there. So you can go about doing that. That's usually a good way, especially for, somebody that's maybe just starting their resistance training journey. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure good fundamentals, good form, good technique. If you have injuries, you have those things that you may be pre-exposed to, make sure you reach out, find somebody who knows what they're doing, make sure that we don't have any compensations or things that are going to come out negatively of that. But usually it's on those time frames. Is what I always try is most everyone that I've first get interacted with is, okay, well, you've been strength training. What have you been using? I have no idea at all, right? Like I don't know, but I know I worked out for an hour. Okay, well, you use the data of the scale and use the data of your waist circumference and the body fat. Use your training as just the same thing, right? Like for you guys, for some of you guys, I saw you guys just got done doing your 500-meter benchmark. Or other than your benchmarks, are you keeping track of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, right? Because if you can, okay, sweet, you know what? I mean, I did 12 miles an hour today, right? Like, awesome. That's progress. Okay. Can you do, are you working towards your first pull-up? Can you do a push-up unassisted? Can you do, what weight did you use? Like last week I used 20 pounds. Okay. This week I'm using 25 pounds. That's progressive overload, right? Like it's being able to see, okay, what am I using? Is my range of motion increasing? Am I doing it faster? Am I doing it through more range of motion? Am I doing it with more weight? Am I doing it with more tension? Am I doing it with the, I'm sorry, there's a million, it's basically infinite of what you can track on there. But if you don't, my big thing is what I was trying to help is if you aren't tracking what you're doing, you can never truly appreciate what you're capable of. Right. And so it's trying to, yet again, shift that paradigm of it.
Yeah. Awesome. Tiffany, we only have a couple of things on the agenda, but we'll get to that podcast soon. I'm sure we will.
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah. We have a whole bunch of things. I just need somebody to turn into a podcast. Like we have like 100 episodes, so it's coming. It's coming. If you know a podcast director, let me know. I just need someone to do the back end because I'm tired of being the
Don't
IT
ask
department.
Questions.
She doesn't want to answer your questions. Oh. All right. Any other questions that we have?
Yes. So Kathleen says, Brandon, I walked 5 miles. I'm guessing a day. Should I add some weights to my body while walking? And then the other question we got, and we're going to do speed round. You ready?
Okay.
You ready? Okay. So maybe you can marry these two together. The other question we got is what's better to start off with, cardio or weights? I can tell you that the philosophy at Orange Theory is you start with the thing that's going to stretch you the most when you're least tired. So for example, if you're looking to build muscle, that's where you want to start often on the weight room floor and then go to the tread. But would love your thoughts on both of those questions in 2 minutes or less.
All right. So what I was trying to look at is, especially for people that are starting out, no matter where they're at, is essentially walking or running. What do we do? Like what the way I like it is what is the control? Because if you're walking 5 miles, you're doing a lot of contractions, right? Like your muscles are having to flex and extend and lengthen in order for you to just function and move, right? Like if I bend my elbow, my bicep is having to flex and contract to pull against my arm to pull it up. Same thing goes if I'm walking. How many steps am I doing? What's your foot function? All those things are going to attribute to that. But also what we tend to see is, even though that's essentially low impact, that's still essentially impactful on my joints, my ankles, my knees, my hips. Those are all having to essentially take load, right? Like I can't stand up right now, but if I'm walking, or especially if I'm running, like studies have shown that when I run, depending on the force I'm putting into the ground, I'm having to absorb up to 300% of my body weight into my joints, my ankles, my knees, and my hips and my low back. And so usually what we tend to see is like, we'll start off with a light run. Well, if I don't have a good base level of strength, let alone like the rigidity of my tendons and my ligaments, because that's the other thing we typically see of like, I'm super excited to start my exercise journey. Awesome, let's go with that. But then we, 2 or 3 weeks later, we start to see overuse injuries of coming up with tendonitis, discomfort in the ankles, the feet, the low back, the hips. And usually that's more of an attribute of not a muscular issue, but more of a tendon and ligament issue. So that's where we want to be able to have time under tension. So for somebody that is going on a walk, we start off sometimes if you want to add a weight vest to yourself, like that's going to add more external load. So that's going to allow for, especially for a lot of women as they get older, obviously osteoporosis, all those type of things start to come through. And so if we can add a little bit excess load via, that doesn't have to be back squatting 8 million pounds and doing those kind of things, but just adding a weight vest sometimes, or carrying a dumbbell or a water jug or whatever that may be, adds more external load. So that can place more, a little bit more pressure on the ligaments and tendons to create a little bit more robustness, so you don't get the overuse injuries as you go through the process of this. Because I think that's the most disheartening side of, like, I was doing so good, but then I got hurt and now I can't do anything.
Well, and Kathy, so I know Kathy and I've been friends for years. I know a little bit of her backstory. She's lost a pretty significant amount of weight in the last couple of years. So Kathy, if you're seeing a little bit less results maybe than you were, if you think about what he just said, is now if you're 50 pounds lighter than you were, like your body's not having to carry that load. So adding the weight vest back on is going to start to increase that, right? And there could be the idea too of just doing some at-home workouts. We do have options for that, like Brandon writes programming for everything. So if you guys are interested in that, let us know. Like obviously we own a gym if you're in Colorado, but like we have a ton of at-home stuff that you guys can do that doesn't have to be a part of anything. It just doesn't have to be part of our gym, but just stuff to get you moving, doing the basics beyond what you're already doing.
Well, and usually, because I know everyone gets wrapped up in like the weight room portion of things like that. Honestly, what I typically try to recommend more than anything for people, especially when it comes to ligament and tendon robustness and longevity, is isometrics, right? Like you can use a wall, you can do a wall sit, you can hold yourself, you can literally hold your knee up. I think I did a little video regarding opening up her feet. Like if that sounds like, if you guys want to see some of that information and want some of the guidance on those, by all means, I'd love to hear you guys' comments and see if that's something that you guys would like just some assistance or some guideline or guidance with. And then we can put together some things to kind of help you guys along that way. That doesn't have to be, an hour more in the weight room and those type of things, just to help. Because I think a lot of the times we see is, especially for a lot of you guys that are, you're gung-ho to try to make change, but then 2 or 3 weeks into it, we get the overuse. Your body hasn't been ready for it. You go back to thinking, you were in your realm of you being a high school athlete or whatever, and you haven't done anything for 20 years. Then now all of a sudden you go back because this remembers, but the body doesn't, right? And so if we can create good patterns, we're here for that. Sorry, that was way longer, 2 minutes.
That was about 6 or 7. When we're getting in there, it's all
I
about
got pulled off the
shifts.
stage.
Shifts.
Shifts. Brandon's goal is to say less with more, or say more with less words. But he has so much knowledge. It's awesome, and we do appreciate all of that. Okay. Any other questions before we move on to part 2 of today?
I think that's all we've got right now.
All right. All right, you guys. So part 2. So we've done obviously a 3-day workshop. We've answered a ton of questions. We've given you guys a lot of information. we've had a lot of questions of like, okay, that was awesome, but now what, right? Like what?
Over that or no?
I can't even read your writing. No, right now.
No.
Time.
We'll get to that later.
Can
we talk about time real quick?
Paper.
She's locked in.
So the question is like, now what? And we've had a lot of people of like, how do we work with you guys? What do you guys do? Like, this group is awesome, but I want more. Maybe had a bunch of revelations yesterday and you're like, this is great to know, but how on earth do I figure out my beliefs? How do I know what my stories are? How do I shift this stuff? Like, what do I do? Right? So we originally started, to give you guys a short backstory. We started this group in December because we just saw a population of people that were walking in like, I need help. I'm doing all of the things. I'm exercising. I'm trying to do everything right. I'm not feeling the way I want. I'm frustrated. I'm, just all of these things. And so we did a workshop like this. We ended up creating an 8-week program that went off of this workshop. It's been incredible. You guys, like, way beyond anything that we could have imagined or dreamed up. Also, backstory, we met Jen November 12th. And we did our first workshop in December 28th, right? So, like, we're the people of, like, when is go, we go, right? And so we launched this group. We had 63 amazing people join our 8 weeks. The shifts have been so cool, right? And I think, and shifters, if you guys are on here, feel free to like tell us what happened. If you are not a shifter right now, there's a ton of testimonials and we'll post them. It's great to hear from us, but it's better to hear from the people that are walking down this road. So I think I would say a whole lot of people joined that program because they thought they wanted nutrition, right? They were looking for the how. I think I need my macros, or I want to know this, or, and that's part of it. But what they realized was that was like the icing on the cake. It was the smallest part of it. And instead, they've changed how they look at themselves. They've changed how they show up in the world. Their confidence has increased. How they move, how they show up, how they think about themselves, how they talk to themselves. They're meditating, right? I got Jen to start meditating. Like, it's just been this crazy, amazing journey. They're 6 weeks in. So the current program is 6 weeks in. So this has been so amazing. We're going to do it again. Okay. So if you missed the first boat, that's awesome. If you didn't even know we existed in December, that's cool too. So we're going to run another, it's called the 8-week shift, where you officially get dubbed a shifter. And the reason we called it shift, you guys, I want to talk about this for just 1 second, is that we, over the years, have worked with thousands and thousands of clients. We've had a physical gym for 12 years. And most people are like, I'm going all in or I'm all out, right? And then they go all in and then they go all out. And so the idea behind shift, you guys, is just that daily 1% progress, right? It's shifting all of it. And this program is really all encompassing. So we talk about the 4 pillars of mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. It does all of that, right? And so maybe today I shift a little bit in my nutrition. Tomorrow I shift a little bit in my weights. And the next day I shift a little bit in my meditation and in my relationships and in my understanding, right? So it's just what really the idea behind shift is, that just constantly making tiny little shifts that you might not think even matter. If you look at the group now, they're 6 weeks in and they're like, those shifts have changed my entire life. They're changing my family's life. They're changing, options that I didn't think I had in this world. So all of that stuff happens, right? So the next program is going to launch March 7th. Okay. It goes, don't quote me on these dates, but Jen will tell me if I'm wrong. I think it's March 7th to April 30th. So it's 8 weeks. With, again, the goal, you guys, is that we really truly believe people are saying, if you can diet and you can have the body you desire and no life and hate it and be in restriction and be in lack and do all of that, or you can have a life that you love, but you're never going to look and feel the way you want to feel. Well, we think that's BS and we know it's not true. So what you're going to get, you guys, is we have a membership site. So you get to go in. There are weekly modules where we dive into the deeper stuff, right? The mind and the body and the soul and all of that. So they're mostly 30-ish minutes, so it's not a crazy amount of time, but I'm telling you guys, for everyone that's currently in the group that's done those videos, they are like light years past the people that haven't done them yet, right? So the goal is that you come in, you watch those modules. We have an incredible Facebook group where there's support and chatting and check-ins and all of this stuff. But the biggest thing with this, you guys, is it's a coaching program, right? This is not a PDF. This is not a self-led module. This is coaching. You get us, right? You get us asking you the questions you might not want to answer. That's what Tiffany just said. She loves us. But I have to say that's not true, because I talk to her every single week. We have a one-to-one coaching option. She answers all my questions. But it's a coaching program, because I would guarantee that if you've done things in the past, most of you haven't had a coach, right? Like, you haven't had a coach. and you start down this path, and then you have a question, and that question throws you off, or you get stuck and you don't know what to do and you don't know where to move, and then you end up just giving up, right? And so
old pattern.
Yeah, we go through all of the things that you think are self-sabotage and willpower, and like how to truly make shifts everywhere in your life. Okay, so it's not like really we say we want to make you like help you get to the best version of yourself, right? We're not doing anything. We're being the Sherpas, as I'll say. But the goal is to really help you become the healthiest, happiest, like strongest version of yourself. We do it in community because most of us that are in this group, either we do some kind of group training. And what we know to be true is that it's so much better. And all the shifters that are on here right now, like we've had days. One of our guys had a bad day the other day and posted about it, and everybody kind of lifted him up and got him through. And he posted the next day, he's like, you guys, just thank you so much, because I would have been stuck in this, right? I would have been stuck in it for days, maybe even weeks. And instead I was able to see it for what it was. I had awareness. I didn't judge it, but I had you guys, right? So we are huge believers in community. So you get community, you get what we call accountability, but really the way we like to look at it is like, we're going to hold you to your ask, right? If your ask is, I want to shift these things, I want to change these things, I want to move into this next version of me, there's going to be a point where you're like, I was just kidding. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to start. I actually don't want to do this, right? So what we're going to do there is we hold space for you, right? There's two sides of us. They're very loving, caring. We're going to hold space for you. We're going to hold you to your ask, right? The other side of that is we're going to ask you the tough questions. We're going to push you past that comfort zone, because that's where all the magic happens. We're going to do all of those things, right? So accountability is hold you to your ask. I believe in the next one, we're actually going to do accountability partners, because it's been shown that if you have a specific person, 85% more likely.
95%.
Okay, 95. A whole lot of percentages that you're going to be successful, right? And everybody that had an accountability partner this time was way more successful, because you have that person. Because we all have those days where you're like, I don't want to do it. This isn't working. I'm frustrated. I'm stressed. Like we all need that. Like we have each other. Jen has us. Like we all have those things, right? So you get accountability, you get coaching, right? So you get us. We're in there, we're answering questions. You can do one-to-one phone calls, right? So everybody, again, we've improved this next go around. The first, before we start, you all get a one-to-one phone call. So it's either with, at this point right now, Brandon or I, to ask whatever questions you need to ask, right? Because we're like, but I have this thing, this is my story,
Pressure,
right? And so we just wanted to have those questions answered. So last session, it was a you get to decide if you want it, and every single person that did it was like, that was the coolest thing ever. Right. I feel so set up for success. So we added that in. So if you join the program, you get that free phone call. So it's 30 minutes with us. It's your half an hour. You ask us whatever you want, like whatever you need to know, you ask. So you get the coaching, you get us. You will get specific nutrition that's geared to where you are. And again, we talked about that in the beginning of this. It's an estimation, but then you have 8 weeks to execute and see what happens, and to reassess and to ask questions and to do what Kat's doing, add some bacon to your breakfast, right? So you get all of that stuff, right? And so our goal really is that it takes you from where you are to that version of yourself that you've been trying to get to and you've been frustrated. And that in those 8 weeks, you've really you've shifted a lot, and you've learned a ton, and you've also taken action to see how that learning changes your life.
Yeah. So let me just say something real quick, y'all.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that you often hear between the shifters, and I can definitely resonate with this, is how many of us wish we knew, like the things we know now, we wish we would have known earlier. Yeah. And it would have been life-changing, right? Regardless of whether that's at work, that's personal, that's with your children, that's wherever it is. And ultimately what it comes down to is confidence. So the question is, what is the price tag of confidence? I mean, that's huge. Believe in yourself, congruency, curiosity, like seriously. The other thing I know, and I think I've mentioned this to a few of you, is I am a mom of 2 with essentially 2 full-time jobs and 2 dogs, okay? You can figure things out. And that's what we're here for, to help you create the structure to invest in yourself. Because I know it could be really hard when maybe you have that one weekly conversation with your nutritionist, your dietitian, your Orange Theory coach. But the thing about us is that we will be in your pocket, which is very different than any other program that you probably look at. So for all those moms out there who are trying to figure out how the heck, just know that the investment you make today will be tenfold in everything that you do going forward.
Yeah. And our big thing, you guys, is that we're going to teach you stuff. I mean, you're welcome to stay with us forever, and we have options for what it looks like after the 8 weeks. But like, our goal is that we teach you all of this stuff so that you don't need us, right? Like we want to empower you to understand it. It was funny when you said like we're in your pocket. Somebody the other day was like, Laura. It was Laura. She was like, "You guys are everywhere. You're in my head." This thing when I was driving, and I was like, "Yeah, you're stuck with us."
There's 10 of us. Y'all just don't know that.
We're everywhere. We're omnipresent. So, but what Jen said, I talked to every single one-to-one client that I've ever worked with. Because I used to do coaching you guys strictly on the emotional side, right? Walking through like all of the emotional sides of food and life and body. And my question always was like, what's the cost of inaction, right? Because everybody's like, what does it cost? And that's a fair question. It's $397. It's so reasonable. But I want you guys to think about the cost of inaction, right? So let yourself think about this, right? If you're being tugged and you're like, this is for me, but what if I do this, right? We'll talk about the fears that are going to show up for you. But I want you to think about what's the cost of inaction, right? What happens if you don't do anything? Where are you going to be in a month? Where are you going to be in 6 months? Where are you going to be in a year? Where are you going to be in 2 years, right? And I promise you that if your life is slowly going the direction you don't want it to go, that in 2 years, in 6 months, you're going to be in a way worse place. Like it's not going to magically change, right? That's the other thing. It's like the cost of inaction is usually so much bigger than any investment that you are going to make, right? Like I've seen so many people that have waited and then they come back and they're like, God, if I had only done that, right? Like Jen just said, like you wish you knew what you had done. If I had only done that 6 months ago, we have people that are like, gosh, I really wish I wouldn't have missed the first one. Well, it's cool. It was only 8 weeks ago. You're not that far behind, but like, don't sit on it, right? So I think a couple of the things that show up for people, and again, we've been doing this a long time, is, I don't know if I can make the investment, right? But it's not never. It's very rarely about the money. It's more about, what if this doesn't work? I've tried all of these other things. Why is this going to be different? Well, I promise you guys, this is different because you probably never worked with somebody that understood the human body the way that we do. You've never worked with somebody that understood all of the deeper factors of your mind and your soul and what's going on and your beliefs. Like if you're working with a nutritionist, that's amazing, but they're not talking about your belief structure most of the time. There are a few that do, but like this is completely different. And ask the shifters, like we'll ask the shifters that are in here to talk about that experience. But like, if you want to talk to them and say, was this really different? They're going to tell you it's really different. So that's the biggest thing. It's so many of us, we talked about trust on the first day, I think. And it was like, you don't trust yourself because things have failed, right? And so you're like, I can't trust myself to make that kind of investment because what if I fail again? Like you've already lost trust in yourself. So what we ask is that you just outsource that trust to us, right? Just let us lead you, right? Just have some faith, let us lead you. And we promise you that if you invest the time, we will get you to where you want to go, or at least get you really started on that journey in those 8 weeks, right? Like I'm not going to promise the sun and the moon and the stars in 8 weeks, but I will promise you that in 8 weeks, you'll be significantly different. Kat says 100% different. So I can't say that, but she can.
And Lenore, she's talking about medications, et cetera, and the cost of that, and not only just the monetary cost, but also the physical cost. Like that's a lot to carry around. Y'all, seriously, I never thought this would be my path, and here I am today talking to you about this because I'm super passionate about the fact that I believe as people, and especially women, we get beat down to the ground regarding diets and one-prong approaches and this talk we have in our head. So I am here seriously for y'all. That's really my mission. At the end of the day, sure, there'll be a financial cost, but I think the investment you'll see will be just incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I think the other thing that comes up is, I've tried these things and like Kat said, it's not a PDF, right? It's not a PDF, it's coaching because we're all different. We all have different stories. We have different paths. We have different things that we've been through. And if you're like, well, I'm doing this thing and it's not working, all you do is reach out. Like we're there all the time. We're on Messenger. We're there. And you're like, I got a question. I have this thing happening. Can I just get on a phone call with you? Yeah, you totally can. And that's the difference. And we'll tell you, like, we believe in coaching. Obviously we are coaches. We also have coaches, like multiple coaches. Like and then I'm not exaggerating this, you guys. So my first program that I did was $12,000. I straight up did not have $12,000 when I said yes to this. But I also knew that if I didn't change something, my life was going to stay on that track forever. Like my cost of inaction was I was going to pass that eating disorder onto my 2 daughters. And that was unacceptable to me. So that investment was $12,000. Beyond that, we've probably invested $35,000 in the last 6 years on coaching, on learning all of this stuff because we believe in it. And when we have coaches and we have mentors, guess what? Our life gets better, right? I mean, I don't think we've ever hired a coach. Well, the very first marketing coach we hired. That one was no good. But that was the only of all the coaching experience we've had. Like, we believe in coaching. We believe that when you work with somebody and you have somebody that can answer your questions, you really will see change. And we are here. We are 100% transparent. This is who we are. That, like Jen said, we're passionate about this. We came together. We saw a need, and here we are. So, shifters, Aaron, Lenore, Kat, like, thank you guys for sharing those kind words. And we just hope that if this speaks to you, that you'll decide to join us. Like we said, it starts on March 7th. Anything else that I missed?
No, I mean, I think that one of the things that I think resonated with us when we started this, you guys, was essentially the statistics that are coming out from where we are on a health standpoint, right? I think for so many of us, we long so much for change, and we for years, we've been doing this for a long, long time. We run across people all the time that we feel stuck. No, nothing works. Nothing's going to help. And it's usually, yet again, we said this on day one, is our job usually as coaches is just to help ask you a different question that you just aren't asking yourself, right? And like, I can't tell you right now, like, you have all the tools. You do. You have all the tools, and I think, and you have all this stuff there, but we get lost in our past.
Gotta unlock it.
And when we try to help out more than anything, is help you understand is your past doesn't equal your future, right? Your past doesn't equal your future unless you decide to live in your past. But it's being able to take the note of understanding of is shifting your mindset and shifting your beliefs, understanding your past and your failures are just opportunities to learn from, right? Like, you are the person you are today because of those experiences, but it also allows you to know that because now you have different information, you got people in different places, different language coming through for you, you're going to be able to see, experience, and change and transform in ways that you never thought were possible. And I believed in this, but I can tell you right now, every single person that's commenting that has gone through this program, I'm speechless day by day by seeing the things in which they are able to experience. And first off, seeing where they were at when they walked through the door, but also just in 6 short weeks of being able to stand up for themselves, being able to feel more confident, be able to look at themselves maybe for the first time in years and say, damn it, I'm proud of you just for signing up for this. Right? Like, and being able to acknowledge it, be able to see myself in a different light, for adding more weight, for being able to run for the first time, whatever that may be, and transforming not just what they see in the mirror, but ultimately what they really see in the mirror is the transformation that's happening from the inside, right? And trust me, as a man, that's a weird thing to like focus on because it's all about action and conquering the world and everything else. But more times than not, it's a really reality of what changes here. Changes here. And I think that's what we tend to what we're all searching for in some shape or some form. And I think it's the cost of inaction, but at the same time from you guys is understand that your past does not equal your future.
Yeah. And I think y'all can see, everybody on here, you can see that we're really passionate about this. So again, you've got coaches who have your back, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. So
I did want to share, the word for today real quick before we so the word for today is shift, SHIFT. So drop that and we'll get you some swag. We'll choose one person to get some swag, and I'll follow up with all those who commented in the last couple of days and make sure that you're being heard, most importantly, but secondly, make sure that somebody gets some nice swag from us too.
Yeah. So you guys, we will drop the go Erica. So we're gonna drop the link if you guys want to head over to the landing page so you can see it. There's a video where we talk a little bit more in depth. But seriously, if you have questions, reach out. I would say too, find a buddy, because like everybody that joined this with a buddy has been that much more successful. So if you have somebody that wants to do it with you, bring them in. The sooner, I will say this too though, the sooner you guys get signed up, the sooner you will get your one-to-one, and that just puts you on a great path. While we start March 7th. We appreciate you guys for showing up for the last 3 days. Oh, one more thing. We have a bonus. We almost forgot. So
a bonus?
We have a bonus tomorrow. Jen's like, what's the bonus?
Oh, that's right.
So tomorrow, you guys, at noon, we're going to do a Q&A on Zoom. So if you've been on the other side of the screen and you have questions and you really want to ask them and you wonder what's different about this and you want to know about going forward, we're going to do a Zoom at noon tomorrow, Mountain Standard Time. So the same time we've been doing the last 3 days. You can join us live. You can talk to us. You can ask questions. You can feel it out, go through all of the things and make, see if this is really a good fit for you. So if you want, I think we'll post the link, but reach out if you want to be on there so we know who's going to be there. Right. It's completely free. We'll be on there tomorrow, same time, same place, and we can talk to you in almost real life.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and drop a post here real quick, and for everybody who comments, I'll make sure you get the link and the password and all that good stuff so you can join us face to face and get to know us, ask all the things.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right, guys. We
All right.
appreciate you, current shifters. We love you guys, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank
Have a
you so
great
much,
day.
you
Bye,
guys.
y'all.
Bye-bye.